There's a lot of ways to approach learning dynamic climbing, but today we'll be going over what I think should be considered the first rule of dynamic climbing. Sometimes climbing tips videos can become a sea of good intentions that are all too easy to get lost in, so in this video I'll go over what I think is the most important part about dynamic climbing. Before we even discuss dynamic climbing, let's talk about swings, since that is an example with momentum I'm sure most of you will have experienced. When you were a child on the playground, you probably played on the swings and would try to get as high as you could. In order to get as high as possible on the swings, you would start pushing off in one direction. This would cause your body to start moving until it hits this moment of weightlessness, a brief pause before it starts falling due to gravity. We'll call this the hover point. When you hit the hover point, you'll then push back as hard as you can. This causes you to fall backwards until you hit another hover point, repeating this process until it feels like you've maxed out your speed. Let's preface this climbing discussion with a look at momentum versus strength in dynamic climbing. It's true that strength is an important part of dynamic climbing, but you'd be surprised by how many static climbers will opt for using what I like to call power via muscle, the campus being the most obvious example, as opposed to power via mechanics, so things like swinging your hips, or even the silly yet effective head thrust. Let's start by looking at how harnessing momentum helps us climb better. Namely, swinging creates momentum and momentum prevents us from pulling with the arms. In this video on how to climb with your hips, we talk about how the hip swing is a great beginner approach to learning momentum. This is because our ability to use our legs to move our center of gravity at speed allows us to launch our body forward. Your legs are the strongest muscle in your body, so it only makes sense that you'd want to use those to generate momentum possible. But even for harder climbs, where there's not that option, the main concept still stands. Generating momentum by swinging will use less force than creating power in one swift motion. To compare, let's take a pull-up for example. The equivalent of not swinging, where we use a burst of muscular force to move dynamically, would be the explosive pull-up. The explosive pull-up is a great exercise to learn how to generate power with your upper body, but it'll still require a lot of upper body strength and training to pull off. Contrast this to what's called a kip. Kipping refers to when you use your leg to help in a pull-up, and doing this will create momentum that helps to move your center of gravity in the direction of the pull, which reduces how much your upper body has to work to pull your body up. Let's now take a look at this oh so important first rule of momentum. Recycle the momentum you generate so that way it's actually harnessed to execute the move in question. It's so simple, but you'd be surprised how often non-dynamic climbers make this mistake. Remember when I said that on a swing, once you hit the hover point, you have to push forward or backwards as hard as you can? Now let's see what would happen if I got this timing wrong. You can see that by not pushing when in the hover point, whether it's too late or too early, means that I won't be able to recycle the momentum optimally. Let's see what this would look like on a climb. You can see here that all the momentum from my hip swing ended up being wasted and instead just ended up with a lock off with extra load to tire me out. There are two main times I notice people make this mistake. One, when people are swinging to generate momentum, making this mistake here means you don't build up momentum, so going for the hold later has reduced momentum. 2. When people are done swinging to generate momentum and are now trying to go for the hold. Making the mistake here means all or most of your swinging will be wasted and you'll probably use more muscle than necessary to do the move. Don't let your momentum go to waste. Make sure that it's being transferred along your body so it can actually propel you to the next hold. The takeaway, when you're loading up with your swings, make sure you are as forceful as necessary when you hit the hover point. This ensures you won't waste energy between swings and that when you try to swing your body to the hold, you'll have the force transfer to the hold instead of letting it disappear. So, the first rule of momentum is all about how we can fully leverage the momentum we generate. But generally there are non-technical reasons associated with why solely static climbers struggle to do so. This will be an incredibly important part of learning to be a dynamic climber if you're a beginner to dynamic movement. Not if you're a beginner climber, but if you're a beginner dynamic climber. This distinction is even more crucial if you're, say, an intermediate or advanced climber, but achieve all your success solely through static climbing. There's always good and bad sides to the same thing, and being intermediate or advanced will imply comfort, which is good because it means you're experienced in general. But the negative could also include having a comfort zone, and solely static climbers have comfort zones that make it hard to learn dynamic movement because the comfort zones usually lead to limiting beliefs. like I'm just not strong enough. I like the stability of static climbing. Or sometimes even, I'm not good at dynamic movement. Static climbers tend to be bad at maintaining consistent recycling of momentum due to mental reasons. They like the stability offered by static climbing, so their default mental state is that of safety or reliability. But for dynamic climbing, you need to be adventurous and decisive. You'd never be able to get high on swings if you're not kicking as hard as you can, and that willingness to confidently throw your weight forward is crucial for executing dynamic movements. Here's some practical mental training advice. There's a form of visualization that is all about how to regulate your emotions. You can visualize a time when you got high on the swings and think about the emotions you felt at that time. You probably remember how you felt daring, ambitious, and threw caution to the wind as you threw yourself forward to get as high as possible. Visualization like this is really helpful for breaking out of your comfort zone, since remembering a time where you felt confident and decisive makes it easier for you to act like that in the present. Remember, the first rule of momentum is all about actually using the momentum you generate in order to make your climbing more efficient. Whether it's through the full-on, fully committed, all points off dyno, the delicate tension-based dead point, or even small momentum micro adjustments on slab, mastery in momentum all comes down to how well you can control your body when it's moving through a state where you have a total lack of control. Basically, there's so much to dynamic climbing besides getting stronger, so hopefully this video will get you psyched to get out there and start practicing these concepts. Alright, so that's it for this video. If you like this video, then you might like this video on intermediate drills. The second drill in this video also has some pretty good tips for how to leverage momentum and how to train it. If you like the video, then subscribe for more climbing tips and progression content, and I'll see you in the next one.